You must not speak during the hour of stillness. I moved to Nayeon's Rest because of a scholarship. A full-ride cultural anthropology program. All I had to do was spend a year in this remote research colony, documenting the practices of its 100 or so inhabitants and sending monthly reports back to the university. It sounded strange, sure, but I'd spent months studying tribal behaviors and forgotten customs. This was just another field study, right? Wrong. Nayeon's Rest didn't show up on maps. The moment I arrived, my phone lost all signal, even GPS. The town sat low in a flat gray basin, ringed with jagged, rust-colored hills. The air smelled metallic, like warm iron or blood in the nose. People wore old-fashioned clothing, loose tunics, leather belts, simple sandals. There were no clocks. No mirrors. No windows. That should have been my first clue. The head researcher, Dr. Ira Mazik, met me at the edge of the town. She was thin, almost painfully so, with a shaved head and 3 silver lines tattooed under each eye. Her voice was calm and quiet, like she was always mid-prayer. She gave me a thin folder and said, "This is the rule book. You must follow every one of them. They are not symbolic. They are for your safety. Read them at dusk." Never before. I didn't understand why dusk mattered. But I nodded. That first night, after the sun dropped behind the red cliffs, I opened the rule book in the dim light of a sulfur lantern. There were only 6 rules written inside. 6 rules that would begin to unravel my understanding of reality. Rules of Nayeon's Rest. 1. Do not speak during the hour of stillness, 3:33 a.m. to 4:33 a.m. Not even in a whisper. Do not hum. Do not pray. 2. If someone knocks exactly 7 times on your wall at night, do not respond. They are not seeking your company. 3. You may hear a baby crying outside between the 3rd and 4th hour of night. We have no infants here. 4. Before sleeping, place 3 drops of blood onto the center of your pillow. Not more. Not less. 5. If you forget any of the rules, do not pretend to remember. Dr. Mazik will know. 6. You are being watched, even when alone. Especially when alone. I closed the book and stared at the walls of my assigned room. It had no decor, no switches, no outlets. Just a stone bed with red linens and a lantern hanging from the ceiling on a rusted hook. My pulse beat faster. I told myself it was all ritual. Cultural theater. Old rules from a long-dead belief system. I've studied this before. I've written papers on it. At 3:32 a.m., I woke up to the lantern flickering. A cold stillness spread through the room, thick and heavy. I felt it press into my chest like an invisible hand. The air didn't move. Not even the threads of my blanket shifted. That's when I understood, this wasn't superstition. This was enforced. Something was holding everything still. Then I heard a voice. "Hello?" It whispered, soft and childlike. "Is someone there?" I froze. It wasn't coming from outside. It was behind my headboard, inside the wall. 7 slow knocks followed. Tap. 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 My mouth filled with saliva. I remembered the rule. Do not speak. Do not respond. My tongue fought me. I wanted to call out. I wanted to say, "Who's there?" But something deep and primal held me still. I waited. Exactly at 4:33, the air moved again. The weight lifted. The lantern brightened. The next morning, I found blood beneath my pillow. I hadn't remembered to offer the 3 drops. But they were there. And they weren't mine. I stared at the pillow for a long time, not touching it, not even breathing too loud. The blood was dark and fresh, 3 small dots so perfectly placed they could have been painted. My hand hovered near the edge of the bed, trembling. I hadn't pricked my finger, hadn't scraped myself. I knew this because I checked every inch of skin in the cracked metal mirror hanging in the communal washroom. No wounds. No blood. And yet there they were, 3 droplets on white linen, like a signature I didn't remember signing. I thought about asking Dr. Mazik. But something about the way she looked at me, like a person already catalogued, labeled, and stored, made me hesitate. Instead, I walked the town. The people of Nayeon's Rest greeted me with quiet nods and placid smiles, but no one shook hands. No one got close. Their eyes lingered too long, as if they were trying to see through me. Like they were checking for holes. I spotted a boy sitting near the stone fountain in the town center, tossing pebbles into the water. He couldn't have been more than 8, but his expression was too still, too hollow. I sat beside him. "Hey," I said softly. "Do you live here?" He didn't look up. "Don't talk to the ones who knock." The hairs on my arms stood up. "Who told you that?" He finally turned his head toward me, and for a brief, sickening moment, I saw his face flicker, like a bad signal. For 1 second, his eyes were on the wrong side of his face. Like someone had drawn them in a hurry and messed up the placement. Then it was gone. Normal again. As if it hadn't happened at all. "Them," he said, nodding toward the hills. "They come down during the stillness." I felt a chill crawl up my spine. "You've seen them?" He nodded slowly. "They don't like it when you speak. They remember every word." Before I could say more, the boy stood and walked away, pebbles clinking in his hand like bones in a pouch. I never saw him again after that. I asked around, described him in detail. No one knew who he was. Some claimed no children lived in the colony anymore. Some just turned away. That night, I placed 3 real drops of blood on my pillow. My own this time. I wanted no mistakes. I wanted to be sure. At 3:32 a.m., I was already awake. I heard the stillness arrive again. Sudden, absolute. The lantern dimmed, and the shadows seemed to deepen until they felt like liquid, slithering into the corners of the room. Then came the sound. Not the knock. Not this time. This time, it was breathing. Right next to my ear. I couldn't move. Couldn't even flinch. It wasn't sleep paralysis. It was something deeper, something mechanical. My lungs still worked. My heart still raced. But my limbs, they weren't mine anymore. I couldn't even twitch a toe. "Why won't you talk to me?" the voice asked. It sounded like a woman. But not a human woman. The voice had too many layers, like several people speaking the same sentence through each other. It echoed in my head, but also buzzed in my bones. "I know you're awake. I can feel your heat." My fingers ached from trying to move. The voice grew angrier, more insistent. I felt something touch my shoulder, not a hand, but a palm-shaped cold, like someone had pressed the absence of a limb into my skin. "I was promised a companion," it hissed. "You were supposed to speak." It dragged out the last word, as though the syllables were wet with saliva. Then the walls pulsed, not with sound, but with motion. Like something enormous had brushed against the outside of the building. The air felt thick with pressure, like I was suddenly underwater. And then, it stopped. 4:33 a.m. The lantern brightened. My arms were mine again. I cried without sound for 10 minutes straight. When I sat up, my pillow was clean. No blood. No trace. But on the stone floor beside my bed, I found a single long hair, jet black, soaked in something cold and viscous. Not mine. Not anyone's I'd seen. And etched into the wall, as if with fingernails, were the words. "You were promised to me." I packed my bag that morning. I was going to leave. Rules or not, stipend or not, I was done. That's when I discovered the second boundary of Nayeon's rest. There is no way out. I confirmed that on the 4th morning. I waited until just before dawn, when the colony was still wrapped in half-light and dust. I didn't pack much, just some clothes, a notebook, and the rule book. I followed the path that led west, the one they told me was a dead end. They said the cliffs were too steep to climb. They said the sand beyond was false, like a mirage. They said the land didn't want us leaving. They were right. After 20 minutes of walking, the buildings disappeared behind me, swallowed by the mist. I kept going. For hours, I thought I was making progress. But when the sun reached its peak and started its descent, I crested a narrow ridge and saw the colony. Directly in front of me. The same fountain. The same rock garden. I had looped, impossibly, in a straight line. My footprints in the sand proved it, they led forward, not back. And yet I had returned. I collapsed to my knees. That night, I didn't sleep. I stayed up with the lantern burning low, sitting in the farthest corner from the bed. The rules said nothing about movement, only sound. I figured I could avoid the stillness if I just stayed quiet and far from the source, whatever the source was. But the stillness followed me. At 3:33, the world fell silent again, not like before. This time, it was angrier. The air pressed against my ears so hard they popped. The glass in the lantern didn't flicker, it bent, like it was being pulled inward by some invisible breath. Then, the floor began to sweat. Yes, sweat. Thick drops of fluid emerged from the stones themselves, pooling toward the center of the room. They smelled like sulfur and rot. From the wetness, something began to grow. It started as a shadow, a long, twitching line that rose slowly like a plant seeking sunlight. But it had joints. Bones. It bent in all the wrong places. A finger. Then another. A whole hand, enormous and slick and jointed like an insect's leg, emerged from the puddle and reached toward my cot. It groped across the sheets, searching. My heart stopped as it touched the pillow. The fingers tapped it once. Twice. And then, when it found no blood, it paused, like it was confused. I hadn't done the ritual. I wanted to test it. To see what would happen if I didn't offer my 3 drops. Now I knew. The hand began to pull at the sheets, not violently, but methodically, like it was unwrapping a gift. It moved with a rhythm that suggested purpose, not rage. A hungry patience. And then it stopped moving. As if it had sensed me. The fingers curled. I held my breath. The hand snapped toward my corner, quick as lightning, but hit the stone wall instead. It thrashed, angry, until the stillness ended. Then it retracted into the floor, dragging the wetness with it like it had never been there. When I checked the cot, the words "you belong to the rest" were scrawled across the pillow in something that smelled like formaldehyde and old copper. I tried to tell Dr. Mazik the next day. She didn't ask how I was doing. She didn't blink when I described the hand. Instead, she tilted her head and said, "You didn't offer the blood, did you?" "No," I admitted. I wanted to know if it was real. Her lips curled into something like a smile, but it was hollow. Perfunctory. You don't test rules here. You obey them. Curiosity is not survival. I asked her then, directly, "What is the hour of stillness?" She walked to the edge of the room and placed her hand on the stone wall. "It's not an hour. It's a feeding." Later that week, I discovered the chapel. They never told me there was a chapel. No one prayed publicly in Nayeon's rest. No symbols, no crosses, no idols. But tucked behind the smokehouse was a structure made of bone-white stone and tall, narrow beams that hummed when the wind passed through them. I entered alone. Inside were rows of thin, splintered pews and a ceiling painted entirely black. Not painted, scorched. The blackness smelled like ozone and burnt hair. There were carvings along the back wall, spirals and runes and symbols I couldn't place, all flowing toward a central altar shaped like a funnel. And behind it, a small, square opening in the stone. A window, maybe. A mouth. On the altar sat a single human tooth. I didn't touch it. But as I stood there, I heard something behind the walls. Something breathing again, but not like before. This time, it was slower. Deeper. And it was mimicking me. Perfectly. Every inhale I took, it inhaled. Every exhale, it followed. And then it spoke, not in English, not in any language I knew. But I understood it. Closer. I ran. That night, the rule book was gone. In its place on the table was a new page. A single sentence, written in smudged, oily ink. "You are now the 7th. I didn't sleep. I didn't blink. I just sat there, waiting. Because I knew what came next. 7 knocks. And this time, I was expected to answer,